Welcome back to the channel. This is a More Better Ascend coming at you with the most expensive deck that I've ever made in my entire life. This deck is $1,800. It's kind of insane. The power is insane in this deck, but the cost does not equal that amount of power. This is a very, very powerful deck, but for $1,800, do not buy this in paper. Proxy this thing or just play it on Arena. But this is the Double Dragon deck. This deck is trying to get Ugin Spirit Dragon and Ugin Eye of the Storms out on the battlefield at the same exact time, where you will have full control over the entire board, and it will be very, very, very hard for someone to beat. So let's hop into the deck and see what we're going to do to ramp up to these giant spells and see how we're going to get there. All right. I have Soul Ring in here. This is a 1 mana rock that taps for 2, but that's illegal in Historic. So I have some options down here to swap out for. So you could put 4 Guardian Idols in the Soul Ring spot if you wanted to play this on Arena. This is a 2 mana rock that taps for 1, and you can also pay 2, and it becomes a 2/2 artifact creature until end of turn, which is nice because you can use that to chump block your for your Ugins to keep them their loyalties high. All right, what else are we going to do to ramp? We're going to use the Mind Stone. This is a 2 mana artifact that taps for 1, and you could pay 1 and sacrifice the Mind Stone and draw a card. I love this card. This is a great card. The art on it is amazing. I love the art on this card. And it's just a staple for forever of a mana rock. Let's keep talking about ramp. The next option is for 4 mana. It's Hedron Archive. This is basically Mind Stone doubled. It's double the mana, so it's 4 mana. It doubles the amount of mana that it outputs with 2. And you can, instead of paying 1 and drawing 1 card, you pay 2 and you can draw 2 cards if you sacrifice it. If you don't want to go with this spell, there's also another option that I put it in the sideboard. It is Worn Power Stone. It, again, taps for 2, but you only have to pay 3 to get it out. But the only caveat is that you're spending less mana to get it out, but it enters tapped, and it doesn't have the ability to draw cards later in the game. So you're kind of not in a good spot with this if you want the flexibility of being able to immediately tap it for 2, or if you want to draw cards with it. So that's why I went with Hedron Archive over Worn Power Stone, but it's totally up to you what you want to do. If you want a better curve, then you can go with that. All right, now, what else we got in here? We need to have some interaction because, we're just going to keep ramping. We need to do something to stop these other decks from attacking us and killing us before we can get the Ugins out. So that's why I put in 4 copies of Kozilek's Command. This is an instant. It's 2 colorless and X, and you get to choose 2 modes. And with the amount of ramping that we're doing, we're going to have so much mana that X can be very, very high, which is very good. It has 4 different modes, and you get to pick 2. Target player creates X01 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature tokens with sacrifices creature, add 1 colorless, which is very good for our ramping. So even if we didn't want to use this to destroy something, we could use it to ramp into our next turn. Target player scries X and then draws a card. So this is good for us so we can line up our next few draws and then also get a card get the next 2 cards that we want right now, meaning drawing the card, and then on our next turn we would draw the next card. We would usually play this on their turn. Exile target creature with mana value X or less. And so now this is our main removal package, minus the Ugins and the Ulamogs and stuff like that. So this is going to be the spell that is a spot removal for different creatures. And then if we're playing a graveyard, if we need some graveyard hate, exile up to X target cards from graveyards. That's not really going to be a factor very often, but if we are playing a deck that, needs some graveyard hate, then we got the card for it. All right. Now, the One Ring. This needs no explanation. It's a 4 mana legendary artifact with indestructible, and when you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn, but your planeswalkers do not. Just you do. So you still need to defend your planeswalkers. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, so at the beginning of your turn, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the 1 ring, and then you can tap it and put a burden counter on the 1 ring, and then you draw a card for each burden counter. So, we're going to be losing some life, but we're going to need to gain that back, and I'll show you how we're going to gain some life back to get that. But this is a great way to just have insane card advantage for the entire game. All right, now let's say we don't get 7, 8, or 10 mana, and we have these cards in our hands, and we don't know what to do with them because we ran out of spells to ramp into. That comes Thrawn Temporal Gateway. This is a 4 mana legendary artifact that goes out into the battlefield, and then you can pay 4 and tap it and put a historic permanent from your hand onto the battlefield. So that means we can put a Ugin, either one of them, or an Ulamog out there for 4 mana, which is absolutely insane. You don't get the trigger on the Ugin Eye of Storms that lets you exile a permanent because you didn't cast it. But, that's that's a trade that I will make to get it out for 3 mana cheaper. All right, we already talked about Hedron Archive, so now the next most important card, Forsaken Monument. This is another legendary artifact for 5 mana. Colorless creatures you control get +2/+2. So that, not really big of a deal to give Ulamog +2/+2 to make it a 12/12. But it does matter if we did create a bunch of colorless Eldrazi spawn creature tokens, because now they're all 2/3s, which is huge for blocking. If they're coming in with a bunch of tokens or whatever they're coming in with, now we have something that can block and kill their things, which is great. The next thing is definitely the engine for this card, for this whole deck. Whenever you tap a permanent for colorless, add an additional colorless mana. So that means all of our mana rocks produce an extra mana. That means all of our lands produce an extra mana. It basically doubles the amount of mana that we have available to us, which is absolutely crazy. That's the easiest way for us to get an Ugin, an Ulamog out as soon as possible. And we were talking about gaining life because we're going to be losing some life to the 1 ring. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, you gain 2 life. So, you usually plan on casting at least 1 spell per turn. So you're going to be gaining 2 life per turn. The 1 ring is going to lose you some life, but it's going to be a nice balance to keep us alive. All right, now let's get into the big boys. This is the moment you've all been waiting for. This is Ugin Eye of Storms. This is the new card from Tarkir. It is a 7 mana, 7 loyalty planeswalker that has a static ability that when it enters, when you cast it, exile up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. So this deck up against another fully artifact deck might not be that good because you won't be able to exile things with this card, but it's still a very powerful planeswalker. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, exile up to 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. So every single time you cast something, we're gonna turn a Mind Stone into a removal card and then also ramp us. And then it has 3 modes. You can +2 to gain 3 life and draw a card, which is amazing. It's a fantastic +2. Or you can 0 it and add 3 colorless mana. So if you had 7 mana to get him out, now you can add another 3 the next, when all your stuff on taps, and you can get Ulamog out the next turn. And then the craziest of all the modes. Search your library for any number of colorless non-land cards, exile them, then shuffle. Until end of turn, you may cast those cards without paying their mana costs. So every single thing in our deck, except for Ugin, except for Kozilek's Command, we can cast, which is crazy. We could have everything out on the battlefield that's not legendary, and then pretty much just be drawing lands. All right, so the next planeswalker is going to be Ugin, the Spirit Dragon. Now, this card's been around for a while. It's a staple in colorless or artifact decks in Historic, but now it's got a partner with Ugin Eye of Storms. But the classic 8 mana, 7 loyalty planeswalker does the job, I think it might still have the edge at being a better planeswalker than the new Ugin, but we'll see. This card, its +2 is it deals 3 damage to any target. So you can either start pinging away at them, or you can start taking out smaller creatures, which is great for a +2. Now, its -X, which is the middle ability, I think is the best ability that it has. It comes in with 7 loyalty, so as long as there's not anything out there that's more than 7 mana, we get to exile each permanent with mana value X or less that's 1 or more colors. So obviously it's not going to touch any of our stuff, but we're going to be able to exile pretty much their entire board, which is like a Sunfall. And then it's -10, which is also insane. Gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, and then put 7 permanents from your hand onto the battlefield. And other than Kozilek's command, our entire deck is permanents. So if we get there, we can just draw 7 cards and dump them all on the battlefield. Then on the top end, this is kind of a win condition, kind of a, not really a win condition, but like a bomb. We needed a big bomb at the end of the deck. It's because obviously both Ugins can kind of win you the game, but we needed a big body that's going to really give them a problem. So I put in 2 Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. Now, you could choose a different card if you'd like. I'll just go over what Ulamog does, and then I'll talk about the option that I put in the sideboard. This is a 10 mana 10/10 Eldrazi that when you cast it, you exile 2 target permanents. So not like with the other Ugins where you have to target something that's colored. This will just let you exile anything. It's also indestructible, and whenever it attacks, the defending player exiles the top 20 cards of his or her library. So by the time he gets out, you're going to be exiling so many cards off the top of their deck, and they've already gone through so many cards just from playing the game to get to that 10 mana that you're going to mill them out in probably 2 turns. But another option to put in for Ulamog is Platinum Angel. So this is a 7 mana 4/4 flyer that just says that you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game unless this creature is handled in some way. So there's not a lot of artifact removal. And obviously there's a lot of exile spells, but I thought exile spells would work on Ulamog too. I thought Ulamog had more game ending abilities, whereas this would just drag the game out longer, and you kind of just want to get to your victory. You don't really want to just drag the game out for no reason. It's not part of our win condition, especially with the 7 mana. That means we can cast our planeswalkers at that point. So I would rather cast my planeswalkers over the Platinum Angel and then kind of hold that Ulamog as like the big bomb after the planeswalkers are out there. But whatever you want to do, you can do. I put the Platinum Angel in the sideboard as an option to sub in for the Ulamog if you'd rather do that. All right, so that's the deck. That's what we're going to really be working towards. Let's look at the mana base now, because the mana base is a little complicated here. We have a lot of colorless lands, and they all do a lot of cool different things. So let's just start off with Blast Zone. This is going to be a way for us to wipe the board. It's a colorless land that comes in with a charge counter on it, and you can pay XX and tap it. So at the end of your turn, or at the end of their turn, if you still have some mana left over, and you see that they have a lot of stuff with 2 or 3 mana value, and you could pay the X, pay the 2, and put a charge counter on it. And then on your turn, or whenever later, if their board gets too out of control, you can pay 3 and sacrifices and destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone. So it's not going to handle tokens, but it will handle permanents that have mana costs, because you can't have 0 charge counters on this. So I put 2 of those in there. It's kind of like, it's a land, but it's also a board wipe, which is nice. I have Buried Ruin. This is a 1 mana colorless land, and you sacrifice it, pay 2 and sacrifice it, and you can return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand. So so all these lands aren't just going to be, a land. They all have another function that's going to help us. So this is a, going to bring something from the graveyard into our hand. So let's say, you know, we played a 1 ring and it's got too many burden counters on it, and we cast another one and we sacrifice that one because the legendary rule, it'll be in our graveyard. So then when that one gets too many burden counters on it, we can use the Buried Ruin to bring it back and cast it again and start back over from 1. All right, we have Crawling Barrens. This is going to be another way to try to defend our Ugins if we need to. It's a 1 mana colorless land that you can pay for and put 2+1/+1 counters on it, and then it will become a 0/0 elemental creature until end of turn. So again, if you don't have Blast Zone out and you have some extra mana at the end of your turn, use 4 mana and throw 2+1/+1 counters on this before your turn's over. Just keep getting this thing bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, because then it's a giant body eventually if you have extra mana. And with the amount of mana rocks, you will have extra mana. And with, what's this called? Forsaken Monument, it's going to be able to create that many more abilities to just dump this on there. And you don't have to tap this. You can just, if let's say you had 8 mana, you could just throw 4+1/+1 counters on this, and then that's it. You don't need to actually have it do anything. And then we got Fomori Vault. This is from Big Score. This is a colorless land, and you pay 3, discard a card. So we have a lot of legendary cards in our deck. So you know we can't keep putting them out there. So we could pay 3 and discard a card, which would be one of those legendary artifacts, and then look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of artifacts you control, and put one of those cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it's basically a tutor. So you're going to be able to tutor for literally anything that you want, for any card, basically. So it's a good way for, if we can't find our Ugins, we can find an Ugin. If we can't find our Ulamogs, we can find our Ulamogs. All right, next up we have Haven of the Spirit Dragon. This is also adds colorless. You can also add 1 mana of any color to cast a dragon creature spell, but we won't be doing that. And then you can pay 2 and sacrifice this to return target dragon creature card or Ugin planeswalker from your graveyard to your hand. So just like how Buried Ruin can bring back any of our artifacts, the Haven of the Spirit Dragon can bring back one of our Ugins, and then we can recast it if they had, you know, a Shoulder's Edict or another way of destroying a planeswalker. All right, we got Inventor's Fair. Inventor's Fair. We just have a 1 of this because it is legendary. We don't want to run into a instance where we can't put a land into play that's in our hand. And it says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more artifacts, you gain 1 life. That's great because we're going to have tons of artifacts on the battlefield. So this is just going to constantly give us that 1 ping of life every turn, which could be very, very helpful in the future, especially with the burden counters on the 1 ring. It taps for a colorless, and then another way of searching for things. We can pay for and sacrifice this and search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle. Activate only if you control 3 or more artifacts. So this is another way to, you know, tutor up 1 ring or tutor up a Forsaken Monument or something like that. Then we got 4 copies of Radiant Fountain. This is just a basic, you know, taps for colorless, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, which is very nice because we're going to need that extra life for sure because we don't have a lot of creatures in this deck. Then we got Ugin's Labyrinth. This is a great card from Modern Horizons 3. So turn 1, you throw this down. You have an Ugin in your hand. You can't play that for a while, so throw it underneath this. And it says exile a colorless card with mana value 7 or greater from your hand. So that's both of our Ugins and our Ulamog. And you can add 1, but if there's a card exiled with the Labyrinth, you get to add 2. And then later on, when you have enough mana, you can tap it, and this card comes back to your hand, and then you can go and cast it. Pretty cool. We have 1 copy of Wastes, just in case. You know, we have a lot of lands doing a lot of cool things for us and a lot of advantage. So if they have a way of destroying one of our lands, then we have a way of searching for a basic. We just put the 1 basic in there just in case. It's good to have. You don't want to have an instance where they destroy one of your lands and then you can't go search for another one to replace it. And then that puts you behind. And then 4 copies of Zalfirin Void, which lets me scry 1 and just adds 1. So the scry is great when we're looking for something specific, or if it's something that we already have that's legendary, we can get rid of it. or it just throws things in our graveyard so that if we do have something that can recur it, like the Haven of the Spirit Dragon or the Inventor's Fair or the Buried Rune, we can come and grab it. All right, so that's the deck. This is going to be so insanely powerful. It's just truly showing the power of artifacts and colorless in the format. It's all of the most powerful cards all in one deck, and this is going to be an absolute monster. Like I said, it's $1,800. Do not buy this deck. Please do not buy this deck. It's $1,800. There's no point in paying for this. Just proxy these cards and go have fun with your friends, or build this on Arena and swap out the Soul Ring for Guardian Idol, and it'll be just as powerful. But until next time, I'm More Better Ascend, and we'll catch you for the next deck tech.